Past, present, or future? It seems as if most paranormal occurrences can be labeled with one of these three time themes. For example, past. The ghost of a long-lost loved one whom you've never met sits at the end of your bed before dematerializing into the night. Present. The strange lights that you see in the sky seem to be following your every move before suddenly vanishing without a trace. Or future. Unexplainable visions inform you of events which have not yet occurred, but will, according to the slightest detail. Past, present, or future. None of these seem to apply to today's story. A story perhaps best labeled with a single question mark. Hello, and welcome, my freshwater friends, to episode 7 of the About the Water podcast, an exploration of high strangeness on and around the Great Lakes. Today we zip up our winter coats and head to the southern shores of Lake Erie, to the city of Erie, Pennsylvania. It was here where a young woman took an unexplainable journey, leaving her ever wondering what exactly happened out there about the water. Episode 7, Winter Nevermore. Her heart was racing. Lori was sucking in huge gulps of the crisp January air, and she knew there was no turning back. She sealed her fate the moment she agreed to waste her precious weekend going ice fishing with him. As far as Lori was concerned, she had already gone above and beyond her duties as a girlfriend when she bought David the, quote, stupid thing. The stupid thing in question was a brand new $300 gas-powered ice auger, David's birthday gift from Lori and his new favorite thing on planet Earth, and it was now time to break it in. As much as she wanted to rescind her offer to go with him, she didn't want to let David down. He was a good guy, genuinely loved her and cared for her. With a kind and loving smile, she watched as David loaded up the pickup truck, darting around like an excited puppy. With a slam of the tailgate, he embraced her, thanking her again for such a generous gift as he walked around to the passenger side and opened up her door. And off they went. The truck made its way through Erie's snow-covered streets and on to the well-known Peninsula Drive. Although she loved her Erie, Pennsylvania home in all seasons, Lori could not wait for spring. Springtime in Erie means one thing: tourists. Lake Erie frontage is at a premium in the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, there's only about 45 miles of it. And being Pennsylvania's only major city along the lakefront means that the city of Erie is a vacation hotspot. Peninsula Drive is the gateway to it all. Lori looked out the window longingly, picturing what it would all look like in just a few short months. The Ravine Flyer 2 roller coaster would thunder overhead as the first drop artfully crosses the road and back. The campground would be packed with RVs. The picture-perfect outdoor diner would be a sprawling landscape of busy outdoor tables under iconic red and white awnings and umbrellas. Artsy boutiques, the beach shops. Lori loved all of it. It was why she decided to move here. She loved to feel like a tourist. She found something so exhilarating about living in a place that makes you feel like you're always on vacation. Her warm and sunny daydreams were suddenly interrupted by a blast of frigid air. David rolled down his window, eagerly greeting the car full of friends that they were meeting up with. After a brief conversation, they settled on fishing near Presque Isle Marina. With a couple of icy parking lot donuts, they set off into Presque Isle State Park, a long peninsula that extends north and east out onto Lake Erie. On one side, sandy beaches and the vast expanse of Lake Erie. On the other, the huge Presque Isle Bay, which lies between the peninsula and downtown Erie. David, as excited as anyone could ever be, began explaining how this was an ice fisherman's paradise. He promised Lori a huge catch of yellow perch. He was in the middle of explaining how perch move and feed in schools, making it easier to catch several in a short period of time, when Lori suddenly grabbed his arm and blurted out, "I'm gonna die here." David gave a nervous laugh and looked over at her. He slowed his truck as he noticed that she was visibly shaking. Her eyes were fixated on the bay, her face showing an expression of absolute terror. "I'm going to die here today," she repeated in a hauntingly slow and calm tone. Concerned, and a bit spooked himself, David gently put his hand on her arm, at which point Lori let out a blood-curdling scream. David slammed on the brakes and embraced her. She clung to him, screaming for help. Lori was breathing rapidly, eyes darting around frantically as she tried to take in her surroundings. After a few moments of panic, Lori and David came to the conclusion that she had drifted off, waking up mid-nightmare. Lori couldn't recall the last several minutes of the drive. She just remembered feeling a state of utter panic, that something terrible was going to happen. She apologized and sunk down into the truck seat, rattled but convinced it was just a daydream. "How thick is the ice?" she asked. Could someone fall in?" David let out a chuckle and patted her leg reassuringly. "Babe, you could drop a tank on this ice and it wouldn't go through. It's completely frozen over." Lori wasn't convinced. "Well," David continued, "as you know, you need a super-duper deluxe gas-powered auger to drill through it, right?" He motioned towards the auger in the back of the truck with a trademark goofy smile. Lori actually felt relieved. The truck pulled up into a parking lot near the marina, and the group got out and began to unpack their belongings. After securing the vehicles, they walked out onto the pier and began to step out onto the ice. Lori giggled as she watched David and one of his guy friends struggling to maintain footing while trying to move the auger. She sat down on the pier briefly to retie her boot, and that's when she noticed her hands. Her fingers were pitch black. They felt numb, frostbitten. Her skin was pruning and soaking wet. Lori found herself unable to make a sound. She looked over towards David and the group of friends. They were talking amongst themselves, but the sounds were muffled. It sounded as if she was listening to their voices underwater. Adrenaline coursed through Lori as she scrambled desperately backwards onto the pier. She tried to shout David, but her own words were muffled, muted, as if she herself were underwater. Terrified and frantic, Lori cupped her mouth with her hands, yelling loudly in the group's direction. And it was at that moment, when she put her hands to her mouth, that she saw they were completely fine. Dry, warm, without a single trace of frostbite. Apparently, she noticed, nobody in the group had seen or heard her do anything out of the ordinary. They were all busy setting up various pieces of gear. In a short time, the group had erected an ice fishing shack. With a loud woo, David fired up his birthday gift and quickly drilled several holes into the thick ice. "Babe, this thing is awesome!" he exclaimed. Lori smiled politely, terrified, and silently trying to self-diagnose what might be wrong with her. Was she hallucinating? Were these daydreams? Was something wrong with her physically? Was something wrong with her mentally? After a bit of fishing, Lori decided to step out of the shack to clear her mind. Taking a few dozen steps, she looked down at the ice, reassuring herself that, as was evident from the depth of the drilled holes, the ice was many, many inches thick. And it was in that moment that she heard a popping noise beneath her feet. Lori jumped back and took a deep breath. David did tell her that cracking sounds weren't abnormal, but they were something to take seriously. As she backed away slowly towards the shack, she noticed that the sound seemed to be moving with her. Nervous to move, she bent over and brushed off some snow from the ice to check for cracks. At first, Lori was relieved to see only her reflection, looking back at her from the ice. As she took a good long look, Lori's heart sank. It was in that moment she realized that it was not a reflection. The noise at her feet was a frost-bitten fist, feverishly pounding on the ice above. Muffled screams came to the surface of the ice in the form of bubbles. Lori looked back to the group and tried to scream for help, but when she went to inhale, she felt a pain like nothing she had ever felt in her life, like hundreds of razors filling her lungs. Lori realized that she herself was underwater. Desperately clawing at the ice, she looked around for an opening, but after a couple of mere seconds, everything went black. Lori regained consciousness to the blurry image of a nurse looking at her from over the railing of her hospital bed with a relieved look on her face. "Hi, Lori," the nurse said. Upon realizing that Lori was able to speak, the nurse asked a series of simple questions. What's your name? What year is it? And so on. All of which Lori was able to answer just fine. David immediately rushed into the room the moment he heard her voice. Lori told the nurse that her chest and throat hurt, at which point the nurse advised that she remain relaxed and silent until the doctor came in. David sat beside her, clutching her hand, doing his best not to burst into tears. When the doctor did arrive, he remained silent as well, seeming to have trouble choosing his words. He scratched his head a few times while flipping back and forth between the pages on Lori's chart. He eventually shook his head in confusion and sat down at the foot of Lori's bed. Lori began to recount the series of events. The panic attack in the truck, seeing her hands frostbitten while she was sitting on the pier, seeing someone under the ice, and eventually going in herself. The doctor locked eyes with Lori. He explained that she was brought into the hospital in a state of shock. She was hypothermic, and her heart rate was only a few beats per minute. Upon admittance, the intensive care unit had to perform a Heimlich maneuver and CPR to clear her lungs of a significant amount of water. Lori's eyes widened as she asked the doctor, "I almost drowned, didn't I?" The doctor again shook his head in bewilderment. "Well, everything here says you almost did," he explained. "And that's what we're trying to figure out, Lori. Your clothes, hair, and skin were all dry. David brought you here only minutes after you went unconscious." Lori looked over at David lovingly. "You saved my life. You pulled me out of the water." David looked at her, unable to hide his concern. "Babe," he explained, "you never left the truck." So what are your thoughts? Past, present, or future? Was Lori's experience an all too immersive replay of someone else's past tragedy? Could it have been a momentary trip into an alternate present? Or was her experience a warning, a premonition of a future that Lori was lucky to avoid? Similar to Lori's medical records from that day, the only option we're left with is to write a question mark on the folder and just stash it away. After telling me her story, Lori did let me know that since then she's performed a battery of additional medical testing, and the good news is physically, physiologically, neurologically, psychologically, she is totally fine. But the events did take their toll. She and David have since relocated to the southwestern United States. They wanted to live in a place where water was a scarcity, and winter was but a distant memory. And in case you're curious what became of the auger, the proud owner of their new Erie, Pennsylvania home never once complained about it being left in their garage. Brand new and completely unopened. And with that, thank you sincerely for listening and for allowing me to share this time in the present with you. I hope these tastes of high strangeness help add some additional vibrance to your life as you continue to navigate your own story. And as you do, may it be as grand, beautiful, and enduring as our Great Lakes. I'll see you about the water.